Hey horror fans, thanks for joining me for this review of Spiral. Spiral from the Book of Saw. Alright. Cast and crew information down below. And I guess we'll do the IMDb plot here real quick. A criminal mastermind unleashes a twisted form of justice in Spiral, the terrifying new chapter from the Book of Saw. Alright. So, lots to talk about here. And I guess we'll begin at, I guess the question is, do we need this movie or not? I guess I could wait to the end to say that, but I guess, as always with these remakes and reboots or even sequels in some cases, sequels that are, we've waited for a long time, they end up not really being necessary. I don't know too many of them that are necessary. Maybe sequels, yeah, but as far as remakes and reboots, not necessary in most cases. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. But yeah, this is, I think at the end of the day, this one is not totally necessary. Now, I am a Saw fan. I have my nice Jigsaw shirt on here. So I have seen all the movies. It has been a while, so I might be a little rusty. But it's definitely a series I appreciate. As you guys know, I'm a Blood and Guts guy, and this has a lot of blood and guts in it with the traps and so forth. So something I definitely enjoy. And but is this necessary? I don't know. Obviously, they went the reboot route here because doing a remake of Saw is tough. I guess you've not seen any of the Saw movies, or Saw or any of the sequels that branched off of that. Spoiler alert, I'm about to say some stuff, and I'll probably say some stuff about the other ones that will spoil things. And as far as this movie, I'll try to be as spoiler-free as possible. But yeah, Saw doing a remake of Saw, is really tough because it has one of my favorite endings of all time, what I consider one of the biggest twists I've seen. So you really can't recreate that for anybody who's seen the movie. I mean, you can do it again, but it's just not going to have the same effect. It's not going to have the same power, same surprise. So, it's in my eyes, a pretty iconic ending, dramatic ending, and you're just not going to be able to do that again. I guess I'll mention, the ending of Saw with the ending of Spiral, as spoiler-free as possible again in a few minutes. But yeah, that's, a major reason why you can't really remake it, and plus you know who the killer is, at least in the first one, so it's just a really tough thing to do. So we have a reboot. Saw makes it very difficult as is. Even if you were thought you were going to do another sequel, just because of the sequels that follow Saw, kind of cover the bases of a little bit in the future and then a little bit in the past. So it's hard to even do another sequel or even a prequel because you get to see a lot of Jigsaw or John before, even before he really got going, or at least before the events of the first movie. So, you get a lot of jumping around of his storyline. So it's really hard to place and to do it, to do another one. So we have the reboots. Let's begin here. And I guess it came about because I guess the story is Chris Rock had an idea for it, and he brought it forward, and then I guess studios, or I don't know if it was Darren or Josh or whatever kind of liked it, and they went about it and made it. So, uh, a little bit of assumption here, but uh, with police in the news a lot now, and if you've seen or you're going to watch this movie, it is a lot about police. Maybe that's why Chris Rock wanted to do it. Just a complete assumption there. I have not seen an interview with him and know exactly where his mindset was for this. But maybe trying to bank off the police being in the news a lot now. It's not a totally new thing to the Saw series. There is a lot of police involvement. Jigsaw, not a policeman, but there was always an investigation after him and trying to figure out who he was and to capture him. Then as you see later on in the series, and as the sequels go down, there's a little bit more and more police involvement as it goes. So, not a total new thing to the series, but maybe, somewhere in there that's where Chris Rock's head was going. Again, I don't know. But, so yeah, this obviously follows him. He's Detective Banks, I believe. And Samuel L. Jackson plays his father, which is really weird in itself. I don't know why, but it just seemed weird having them father and son. Although there isn't a tremendous amount of interaction between the two. It just, I don't know, it's just weird. But anyway, so, you have Saw. I mentioned in a lot of the movies you have an investigation going on, so you have one here. Early on, a policeman is killed, and it happens to be a good partner of Chris Rock's character. So, of course, he wants to solve this case and be in charge of it. But you're going to find out real quickly that Detective Banks is not a fan favorite in his own department. Not too many people even want him to head this case, but he eventually becomes in charge of it. But he doesn't really have the respect and trust of his fellow officers, and neither does his father. Which is obviously going to be a kind of tip off to what's going on here. Obviously, if you've watched any of the other Saw movies, part of it is kind of figuring out the killer. Obviously, early on, Jigsaw's responsible. And, Jigsaw's kind of one that puts in things in motion, but as the series kind of goes on, there are different people who are ultimately playing the game or putting the game in motion for him. And it's another thing that I enjoyed about the series. And to be honest, I sucked real big at figuring out who the mystery person was that was setting up all these killings. I don't know if I got any of them right. I don't know, maybe Amanda, but I don't know, maybe in a way she was kind of obvious. I don't know. But yeah, as it kind of went on, I really sucked at figuring out, what was going on here. But I always, had fun with it and kind of, played the game. But yeah, so I think one of the things about this is, as it sets up, it kind of limits you in the way of choices of who the killer can be. And I think if you're kind of paying attention to it, I think you can kind of really easily kind of eliminate some people just from the start, even though everybody's kind of fair game. I think they try to drive you to it being a certain character, but at least in my mind, I wasn't buying that. So I think this time around I did well. I did better with figuring it out, um, which in turn makes me kind of doubt what they did here. The fact that I kind of eliminated it and kind of came to a pretty solid conclusion, or at least maybe one or two choices, and kind of leaned in the right direction. Um, I don't know if that's a good thing. And At the end of the day, I don't think I'm really buying that this person as the killer. Um, if you want to make it fair, or you don't want to make it fair. When you compare them versus Jigsaw, they only had one movie, but I don't know, when you kind of compare them or think about it, I don't know. There's just, I don't want to give too much away because I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it, and give off any tips to who this person is. But I don't know. It doesn't really do it for me, and I know they have thoughts of doing other movies and sequels to this. Well, whether they do them or not is up for grabs. But if this person were to continue as the new Jigsaw figure, it's that part of it is not gonna get me to come back. I probably would watch the movie just because I'm a sucker, like I said, to Saw, and be interested to see what happens next. But they wouldn't be as big of a draw as maybe as Jigsaw was. Let's see what else to say. As far as traps, I guess we can talk traps. That's a huge part of it. Again, it would take a lot of effort to kind of, and mind power to kind of go through every single trap that's been in a Jigsaw movie. I'm sure there are videos out there, top 10, top whatever, that could maybe help narrow it down. But at the end of the day, with this one, I think, at least in my mind, the first one was kind of, nice and bloody and very brutal here, which I liked in a lot of the traps in the series. And when it was those kind of traps, I really enjoyed it more. And I think overall in this one, it seemed like after that, some of the other ones, while they did have their creativity to them, were kind of more about pain than maybe the blood and guts and so forth of it. And that's a little bit disappointing. I'm in it for the blood and guts, and I kind of want to see that. And I thought maybe they angled it towards more of driving home the pain the person was going through before they eventually passed away. The other thing I guess I can say about it is that if you followed along, even though I don't really believe it from Jigsaw himself, even though that was kind of his thoughts or the way he wanted to go about it, he kind of always wanted to at least be open to really letting the person have a honest chance of escaping the trap. At least that's what he says. But as you go back and maybe it's a thing of if this really existed, would somebody really be able to escape? It just didn't seem like every trap he said, someone could truly escape. I think down the line, obviously Amanda got in trouble for setting traps that people just were never going to escape. And, I think as the series went on, other people setting traps kind of set, certain traps where people just weren't going to escape. So as I look at this one, I just don't see people escaping many of these traps either. Again, this is a new killer, whether they're following the code exactly of that, of what Jigsaw wanted. Who knows? They don't get into much of an explanation. And again, this movie is, I guess, an important thing to note here is that this is, I think they mentioned 12 years later. What they don't really make clear is they do mention the Jigsaw case. So they do acknowledge the Jigsaw universe, and they do acknowledge that Jigsaw existed. Obviously, the killer here is a copycat, basically modeling everything they do here to take on, the police force here. But what they don't really make clear is are they, is it 12 years later from, the moments of the first movie and the events of that, or is it, 12 years after the conclusion of everything that happened in the Saw series? Which again can be a little confusing because, they go backwards and they go forward in time a lot. So you don't really know where that 12 years is starting, but they do reference it. So, and there's obviously influence there because obviously he's setting that person's setting traps, and at the end of the day, kind of, was doing in the kind of same themed manner. One of the things Jigsaw had was the little doll and the little, spiral things in the doll's face. Here you see the little spiral things all over the place, with the crime scenes. And I guess that's another thing they do change in this movie. They kind of move away from the little creepy doll that they had, and instead replace it with a sort of doll, but this time it's a pig. I should say a puppet, and a puppet pig, and I guess there is some use of pig in the original series, and then obviously you kind of think of maybe they're referencing pig as far as police, to kind of take another shot at them. One of the things also Jigsaw did is he kind of had his recordings and had his voice, or had maybe a muffling of his voice go through, and they do that here with a voice that kind of is telling the cops things on the tape and so forth. And I didn't like the voice. I had a big problem with that. It was just, I don't know, it just didn't seem to fit. It didn't really strike feet. When Jigsaw kind of talked, there's a little bit of intimidation there, and there's a little bit of creepiness. This voice just didn't cut it. The pig was okay. It was a little interesting, and it looked a little more real life than maybe the puppet obviously did. But I really, the voice was bothering me. I really didn't like that. But yeah, I guess I strayed away from the traps. I guess let me just finish my thoughts on that. I think that overall they were just kind of tilted more in the painful direction than in the blood and guts direction. So that made me a little disappointed with them. The final trap or two is kind of interesting. I can't really talk too much about it because I don't want to spoil anything with that, because that obviously affects the end of the movie. But again, I think you'll see that was a little bit more about pain. At least maybe the second to last was a little bit more about pain than anything. And then the final one is mostly to kind of help set up the dramatic moment of the movie, which I think, if you're in all fairness, if you look at some of the endings of some of the sequels, maybe the final traps was kind of tilted in also that direction, to kind of add a little bit of drama to what is happening, as opposed to maybe one of the traps that are earlier in the movie. What else to say about it? As far as the acting, I think Chris Rock is Chris Rock, and Sam Jackson is Sam Jackson. you're gonna get what you expect from them. Also, you're gonna get that. I think moments from both of them where they're cussing a lot, and you know some people may like Sam Jackson, some may not. Some people may get turned off to that, but I don't mind it. I've kind of got used to it, and I think it's a little bit hilarious every time he kind of goes into a rant. So you get a little touch of that, and I think that's expected, and you get a little ranting and raving from Chris Rock as well. But I think it was okay. I was kind of looking at Chris Rock, and I kept thinking of some moments when, back when he was in Lethal Weapon, and he played a cop there too. So it's different characters. He's a lot more serious in this one than in Lethal Weapon. But I was kind of thinking back to that. I guess the only thing that kind of was weird, every once in a while it seemed like the camera kind of, obviously the movie's centered on him, and it just seemed like the camera would kind of go to him and stay on him in a weird way. To kind of maybe look at him as he was maybe the wheels were turning in his head to thinking about, what he wants to do next or what is going on here, and so forth. I thought that was maybe a touch weird in certain places. But yeah, and there's some other familiar faces in this movie. So the acting is definitely not a problem here. What else to say? Let's see. We've had traps. We've had investigation. Can't give away a killer. I guess. Oh, I wanted to mention. I guess the ending again without spoiling anything. I guess. Like I said, the ending. The original movie is pretty iconic. I think. They in a way very slightly want to emulate one or two things there. Again, I can't say much because it would be giving it away. But I guess I'm trying to be careful here. They obviously can't top that moment. You can tip your hat to that moment, but in my mind you can't top that moment. So while they give a slight nod here and there, it is what it is. One of the things that came famous in the Saw movies is kind of a recap of how this the killer kind of came to be, and how kind of the events recapped, and they certainly do that here. They kind of recap certain things that kind of happened during the movie that were hints to you, if you didn't catch them, who the killer is and what is happening and why they're killing. So they do that kind of typical Saw recap there, as the movie is winding down, which was fine. And like I said, I think even when you watch that, it is, going back and looking at some of the other movies obviously makes it obvious who the killer is once you're basically being told and watching, what happened. But I think here it just kind of glares at, hey, this was really obvious from the beginning, and if you didn't pick this person, or this wasn't one of your top choices as the person, you don't really know what you were watching. So they kind of do that. I don't really think it's a spoiler, but I guess another kind of tip to the original is they have a scene where Chris Rock is kind of handcuffed to the floor, and he sees a saw, and kind of going back to the original, where he has to decide, am I going to cut my hand off? Am I going to cut through these handcuffs? Really not a spoiler, because it's not really as big a dramatic moment as obviously it was in the original movie. They kind of just moved forward from that. Kind of looking at that, it was kind of awkward. It's kind of, again, you kind of appreciate them tipping the hat to the first movie, but then kind of making it so not dramatic as the first movie is kind of like, you really didn't have to do that. But yeah, whatever. It just seems like with some remakes or reboots, they kind of feel they have to kind of give something to the prior fans, and kind of recreate certain moments. And I don't know, to me, they don't typically work. I don't know. It's kind of thinking of like the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which is a whole nother story. Them kind of recreating some of those scenes, and I was watching that, you're just kind of like no. So yeah, maybe not as bad as that, but I don't know. It was just just way less dramatic at the end of the day. So yeah, I hopefully I've covered all the bases here. Hopefully I've not spoiled anything. We'll see. If they do some more movies, we'll see where they go. Maybe you can add something on top of this one. But yeah, I think overall, I guess I'm gonna have to give it 2.5 pools of blood. I guess at the end of the day, I wasn't as happy with everything as I wanted to be. Like I said, I wanted bloodier traps and more brutality there. I guess it was brutality in a way, but I guess I wanted it more bloody and messy than they ended up being. And obviously, figuring out who the killer was a lot sooner than I think I personally should have is kind of a little bit of a letdown. And not buying that person as the killer is another problem. But there are certainly some things to like. The acting is good. Obviously, the first trap is really good. Watching the story unfold is not bad. But yeah, I guess it just not really topping too much of what has previously been done, and I guess that's another issue there. So, long-winded and so forth, but I guess with a reboot, it gives you a lot more to chew on and talk about. So 2.5 pools of blood, and that is, of course, out of 5. Reminding myself to make that clear. HorrorSgoryReviews.blogspot.com. You can find more reviews, especially written ones. Twitter, Facebook information also below. You can reach out and we can talk about this movie if you want, other movies. If you have something for me you want me to review, you can reach out to me there and we can see if we can set that up. Also the comment section. Feel free to comment there if you like this movie, dislike it, or if you want to reach out to me for something else there as well. I'm always willing to talk horror, love horror obviously, and doing horror every day, promoting it and so forth, and reviews and so forth. So anytime you want to talk horror, I'm down. So that's it for this chapter of Saw. Maybe we'll get another one, who knows, but this review is over, and I will catch you on the next one, horror fans.